My humble greetings to everyone. My study is entitled Teaching Preparedness, ICT Integration Readiness, and Motivation as Predictors of Student Teaching Performance in Science. So, for us to clearly know the problem, let's have the rationale. Given to the varieties of learning modalities, it turns out that pre-service teachers were having hard times in coping with the new normal, especially in teaching science in the intermediate grades. It makes a difference from a multiple ineffective or underprepared pre-service teachers, Sanders and Rivers 2012 cited by Kiamba and Mutwa 2016, a compromise to ICT integration Tan et al. 2016 and a barrier to motivation Owens et al. 2020 can decrease the teaching performance rate of pre-service teachers in science-related teaching courses. Therefore, the focus of this research was to discover how students perform in teaching science, as well as the relationship and predictive level of teaching preparedness, ICT integration readiness, and motivation to learn in their science teaching performance. Now, to specify the focus of this study, I have the following objectives. First, to determine the level of students' teaching preparedness in terms of professional knowledge, professional practice, professional engagement, and self-management. Another is to describe the level of students teaching ICT integration readiness in terms of technology knowledge, technological content knowledge, technological pedagogical knowledge, and technological pedagogical content knowledge, followed by to describe the level of students' teachers' motivation to learn science in terms of self-efficacy, active learning strategies, science learning value, performance or achievement goal, and learning environment. Also, to find out student teachers' performance in teaching science in terms of grade point average or the GPA. Next is to determine if there is a significant relationship between student teaching preparedness and teaching performance. Second, readiness on ICT integration and teaching performance. And lastly, motivation to learn science and teaching performance in science. So lastly, to determine which among students teaching preparedness, readiness on ICT integration, and motivation to learn science most significantly predicts to student teaching science performance. The conceptual framework of the study is supported by the theory of educational productivity by Woolbridge 1981, who states that aptitude and environment affect students' performance. This theory was presents an appropriate linkage which this study are teaching preparedness by Manyasa and Lanus Chichoriana 2019, ICT integration readiness by Smith et al. 2009, and motivation He Xiao Lian Chuan et al. 2012 supported the assumptions of measurement of independent variables as shown in the conceptual framework. Let us proceed to the methodology in this study. I use predictive correlational research design, which is appropriate in this study due to the use of two or more quantitative variables, and have a random sampling technique as to the sampling, in which I adopted 3 questionnaires as an instrument on the data collection. Then as to the statistical tools for data analysis, I use the mean to determine the level of independent variables and dependent variables among pre-service teachers. In determining the level of dispersion, I use the standard deviation. While as to determine the significance of the relationship between factors, I use the Pearson R. Lastly, to determine which significantly predict teaching performance of pre-service teachers, I use the linear regression analysis. To move forward, let's have the result and discussion. As the table 1 represents, the level of pre-service teaching preparedness, which has an overall mean of 2.41, and has an overall standard deviation of 0.54, which is described as low. That means to say, the teaching preparedness is less observed based on the given parameter limit. This finding supports Maseco and Cozas 2021 claim that pre-service teachers have difficulty mastering science teaching due to its nature of having several goals or purposes directly, which impact the professional knowledge in different ways during the learning process. For the Table 2, which represents the level of pre-service teachers' ICT integration readiness that has an overall mean of 3.43 and has an overall standard deviation of 0.43, which described as high. That means that the student's ICT integration readiness is much observed. This finding is also consistent with the findings of Gabifek and Rusty 2015, claiming a very high perceptive level of technological integration in teaching. For Table 3 represents that the level of pre-service motivation that has an overall mean of 2.44 and has an overall standard deviation of 0.31, which describes as low. That means to say that the student's motivation to learn science is less felt. This finding is supported by Vider, West, and Fortus 2017, who suggest that learners' deteriorating level motivation in learning science are outcomes from a decreasing mastery of teachers in the subject. For Table 4 shows that the student's performance in teaching science has an overall mean of 87.36 with an overall standard deviation of 5.50, which describes as very good. That means that the level of the student teaching performance in science is high. This high level of performance is also similar to the findings of CITIN 2017, which highlights the importance of teaching efficacy of pre-service teachers. For Table 5 shows that the correlational analysis among dimensions of teaching preparedness and science teaching performance of pre-service teachers shows based on the table that the decision is to reject the hypothesis, which has none of the dimensions, has a greater value of 0.05. Yuan et al. 2016 also claimed that professional knowledge and competence, as well as with teaching belief and professional development, can affect teaching efficacy of the pre-service teachers. For Table 6 shows that the correlational analysis among the dimensions of ICT integration readiness and science teaching performance of pre-service teachers shows that the decision is to reject the hypothesis. This is based on the given p-value that none of the dimensions has greater value of 0.05. This is in tandem with the findings of Gabifek and Rosdi 2015 indicating that ICT integration has a great effectiveness for both teachers and the students. For Table 7 shows the correlational analysis among dimensions of motivation and science teaching performance of pre-service teachers. The table shows that self-efficacy, active learning strategies, performance and achievement goal, and learning environment has a greater p-value than 0.05. So the decision is to fail to reject the hypothesis, while only in the science learning value has the decision to reject the hypothesis, which has a lesser p-value than 0.05. A positive correlation between pre-service teacher motivation and performance is also evident in the study of Davao et al. 2016, who also found out that motivation did not vary across their sex, age, and curriculum year and good performance in science subjects. Lastly, Table 8 shows that regression analysis on teaching preparedness, ICT integration and readiness, and motivation as predictors of teaching performance in science, in which ICT integration and motivation has a higher p-value than 0.05, which is a decision of fail to reject the hypothesis, while the teaching preparedness has the decision of reject the hypothesis that has a p-value of 0.001, which is less than the value of 0.05. The result of the study is also supported with the findings of Legaspi et al. 2020. And they found out that the science learning motivations of pre-service elementary grade teachers predict their employment of authentic assessment practices in science in pre-service teachers hold pedagogical andragogical standpoints which are coined from their pre-service education and training. As to the conclusion, teaching preparedness and motivation to learn science were low, and ICT integration readiness, on the other hand, is high. The study also recorded high pre-service teachers' teaching performance in science as observed from their mean grades in science teaching courses. The study was also showed an insignificant relationship among readiness and ICT integration and motivation to learn to pre-service teachers' performance in teaching. However, when taken as a whole, teaching preparedness, ICT integration readiness, and motivation can predict student performance in teaching science. As to the recommendation, curriculum revision, utilization of different online learning platforms, providing effective and efficient instruction, provide practical-based learning or authentic experience, and integration of orientations and seminars on their subjects. Lastly, I would like to discuss also the impact of the study, which focuses on these matters. First, curriculum and instruction. It was revealed in the study that pre-service teachers are underprepared in applying theories and principles in teaching, which highlights the necessity to revisit the curriculum implementation, as well as with the integration of the different trainings in the syllabi. Currently, the institutions in Davao de Oro implements teaching trainings and seminars during student teaching internships. This has to be changed and should be integrated before they will take their practicum courses. Well, as to the ICT integration, with the recent mode of learning, the integration of technology in learning should be emphasized and encouraged to alleviate the quality of learning. With proper analysis of different factors affecting the integration, the concerned stakeholders might provide resolution on the implementation and integration of technology with least effort and cost, but maximize benefits for teachers and students. And lastly, as to the motivation or self-motivation, it was recorded in the study that pre-service teachers are not motivated to learn the subject. This is already a manifestation of declined students' interest in the subject. With this, teachers should consider the revision of teaching methodologies and approaches and should come up ways to increase students' motivation in learning. I understand that we are already exhausted of all the demands of our institutions, but we have to be reminded that students are all waiting for a change and for a better education system. So before I end my presentation, I'd like to quote a famous quotation from Albert Einstein as a sort of reflection to my study. He said about the education system that everybody is a genius. You judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. It will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Therefore, as a catalyst of change, human as we are, we need to change for a better education system. That would be all. This is your researcher, Kirk Tonido. Minasang, arigatou gozaimasu, or shall I say, thank you so much, everyone.